With a Stranger, new record here on Radio 2, 20 past 1. James Dellingpole with us, talking about his road to Lyme disease, which means that for the last, you've been coming into the studio to talk about politics for 10, 15 years. You're probably ill the whole time.
Oh, totally, yeah. So it came and went, and I lived with the disease.
Sorry to interrupt you, James, but I should ask, did it affect your mental health?
Yes, it did. I'm glad you asked that, because I wanted to mention it, and I'd forgotten about this. Almost the worst symptom of Lyme disease, not everyone gets it, is psychosis. And I had psychosis, and I did not realise what was going on.
Meaning detaching from the reality.
Detaching from reality. I mean, some people would say that yeah, that's what I'm like anyway. But it was hell for my wife and family. I was losing it completely, and I made several life-changingly awful decisions, which I won't go into here. I mean, I think I'm going to write a book about it one day. I think I ought to, as a service to the world, so it can help people through this nightmare situation.
Yeah, well, I bet we'll get loads of calls and comments. Alice Reeve in Cheltenham, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Now, you might have caught Lyme disease at the same time as James, because you reckon it was 20 years.
Yes, the late 90s.
Oh, well, do you know how you caught it, first of all?
I actually had a bite in my back garden, and I live in a park.
Okay, so you had that bullseye bite mark or whatever, did you?
Yeah, we found old photographs where we can see the rash. Yeah.
Okay, so how's it been since then?
To be honest, it's been absolutely dreadful. I haven't been able to work. At that stage, I just completed an MBA, and I've just not been able to work. It's affected my joints. Most of my joints have got arthritis in now. Affected my brain. Brain doesn't work. It's just robbed me of having children, having a life.
God.
I'm so sorry to hear that. And your story, I've heard so many stories from people like you. We're a kind of leper class. We've been written off by the medical establishment.
Yes, we have. Yeah.
They don't want to deal with this, because I think it's too complicated, and it's too. If they address the scale of the problem, they'd realise that there isn't enough money or expertise in the NHS to deal with it. So they sort of... I even hear from senior NHS people that actually chronic Lyme disease doesn't exist. This is one of the stories you hear. And look, people like you are real. Can you confirm you are real, and what you're suffering is real?
Yes, I'm very real.
What was the record number of times you went to see the doctors in 1 year?
1 year I was sent down to the Mineral Hospital down in Bath 36 times, but I was also under other hospitals as well.
And that was without them telling you it was Lyme, is that right? So they were, what did they basically think you were suffering from?
I've had things, diagnosis from ME to the fibromyalgia to gout, inflammatory arthritis, unexplained symptoms.
And are you getting better now?
No, unfortunately, I've had a really rough last 2 years, where I was sent to an infectious disease specialist, and 1 minute I was told I had Lyme. They put me on antibiotics, and then suddenly told, no, you don't have Lyme. And then I deteriorated and ended up with septic arthritis, and then I was then sent off to another clinic, which have now confirmed the Lyme. But yes, I've been on a lot of antibiotics because of complications of Lyme, because the immune system is so poor.
Yeah.
I have recurrent cellulitis. I've just been again in hospital with septic arthritis. But the problem is they're not treating the Lyme and getting hold of it.
No, thank you, Alice. Gosh, it is scary, this thing. The key, I'm just spotting when it happens at the first instance is the ideal, isn't it? But it's, as you say, you don't even remember what it was.
And you don't even, this telltale bullseye rash that's supposed to be the great marker, it only appears in about, I think, 30% of cases. So you could have been bitten and you won't get the mark.
If you go for a health checkup, let's say, at your doctor, because often people at the NHS is texting now and they say, come in and have a... Could you say, don't care about anything else, test me for Lyme disease?
Yeah. And what will happen?
Can you do that?
Yeah. And what will happen, if you can persuade your GP, and he or she might not be interested, but if you can persuade them to give you a test, they will give you, I think it's called the ELISA spot test. And this is notoriously unreliable. It gives a lot of false negatives. So you could have Lyme disease, you'll have the test and it'll show up a false negative, at which point you'll be written off. They'll say, well, you haven't got Lyme disease, but actually you have.
Andy Burney in Stockbridge, Hampshire says, I'm a healthy man, but I have suffered from Lyme disease. It's horrible. I still have the symptoms. I get horrendous itching all over my body. That's
another one. Yes.
I'm surprised it's not more common because we have a large population of deer in this country who carry ticks. Yeah, I know somebody who's had it and they've had a hell of a time. Louise Osborne in Bournemouth. Now, you did a brilliant thing. You caught it early in your daughter.
Yes, that's right. Hello there. Thank you for having me on. I think we've had a very, very lucky escape with my daughter. She is 9 now, but when she was about 2.5, one night giving her bath, I sort of spotted this thing on her, a little mark, what I thought was a mole that I didn't recognise on her shoulder. And thought, I have to keep an eye on that. The next night, when I gave her bath, I thought, if that's a mole, it's the fastest growing mole I've ever seen. And I thought, I tried to sort of have a look at it, but she's like, Mummy, get off. So the next morning, she comes trundling into bed with me and we're having a chat. And I said, let me just have a look at your shoulder, darling. And when she sort of turned around, I gave it a quick scrape really quickly. And I said, the head's come off. That's good news, isn't it? Great, whatever that is. Looked in the bed covers, found what I was expecting to be a little scab, picked it up and it walked across my hand. Which totally freaked me out, obviously. So I put it in a pot and I did what I would do with most things I don't understand. I got on Google straight away. Yeah. So I Googled bugs and ticks, and reading up on that led me to all sorts of information about, ticks in the New Forest, particularly in May or June time. And I thought, no, my daughter 2 days ago with her nursery had been on a lovely little trip to the New Forest to see the baby deer. So I knew exactly what was going on there. So I kept reading up, and it started, said, of course, one of the dangers with ticks is that it can actually lead to Lyme's disease. You can contract Lyme's disease from it. So I was like, what is Lyme's disease? Started reading up, and obviously, same from what your listener's saying, it's absolutely horrendous. Started to feel a little bit panicked. I then went on to Lyme's disease sites, and I was reading up about all the different people's experiences who'd had it. And the common theme seemed to be that doctors often don't know a lot about it or how to respond to it. And if you think you might have it, you have to be really persistent with them. So I instantly made an appointment with our doctor, who, incidentally, he's a really cool guy and not offended if you've Googled or researched something. And I told him what had happened when we went and saw him, told him what had happened and what I'd read. And he did. He said, hands up, I'm not an expert on it, but let's have a look. So he got his book out, he read up on it, and he said, right, okay, I think what we're going to do is treat your daughter as though she has contracted it, just to be on the safe side.
I see. So you didn't ever do a test and find out she had? You did the antibiotics and the blood test and all that afterwards?
Well, he was so great. He didn't dismiss me. I was really relieved and pleased because he was being proactive, and he instantly put her on antibiotics. We had to do a blood test, which is obviously fun and games with a 2.5-year-old. But the blood test came back positive. And 27 days later, the telltale ring did appear on the back of her leg, which obviously wasn't where she had been, got by the tick. That was on the shoulder. Yeah. So we went back to the doctors. We were given stronger antibiotics. And I'm trying to remember. I think there may have been another blood test. Okay. I'm not sure. But
she's clear of it now.
She's fine. We've not had anything from it since, but we were told, that's it, that should have sorted it. But reading up on it, it was very, had I not seen it, been lucky enough to see it and Googled it, we could have had a very different story.
Thank you, Louise. Bless you. Thank you. And James, what about that?
Yeah, you've saved your daughter's life, I'd say. I mean, almost literally. When I was being treated at the Infusio clinic in Frankfurt, I met people there who'd been bitten in childhood and had essentially had their childhood wiped out. They were now young adults. They hadn't been able to go to university. They'd had no energy. Their future was almost stolen away from them by this bite.
Samantha Ash in Windsor just echoes what you say, James. It's so nice to hear someone speaking so articulately about Lyme disease. My 14-year-old son has had it since the age of 9. It really is a terrible disease. People need to be more aware of how awful it can be if you don't treat it very quickly. Seriously, with Louise, and thank you, Louise, for that story. With Louise's daughter, that she gets the bite and then there was the bullseye. So that was almost a confirmation that she had been bitten by a tick that had the disease. But some people don't spot it at the time. Lorraine Cullum in Cleethorpes, you've been to A&E with yours.
Yes.
How are you doing?
Who am I speaking to, please?
This is Jeremy. We're on the air, Lorraine.
Hi, yes. I contacted Mr. James Delling-Pole. He got back to me on the 13th of January.
Oh, and you've been really poorly with this for a long time, have you?
Well, I used to work in conservation and in woodlands, and I can't remember being bitten, but I went to Scotland and came back, and I was physically really poorly after that, and I've been poorly ever since.
How long ago was that?
2008.
So you've had it for 10 years, have you? Have you been in bed bound with it?
Well, I'm in bed more now than what I have been.
Oh, James, can you offer some comfort?
Well, I've corresponded with Lorraine, and I feel so bad that the people like Lorraine are not being given the treatment. Their lives they've been taken out of the system. So sorry.
Are you working? No, you're not working now, Lorraine. So you're just trying to get better.
Because I can't walk very far. I can't sit. I can't stand. When I lay down, I'm in absolute agony. I got tingling in my fingers, tingling in my feet, shooting pains all over my body.
Oh dear! It's like torture. Can you?
Yes, it's like somebody's just attacking me with a knife and electric shocks all over my body.
Can you get any sleep at all or not? No, probably not.
I have something to sort of knock me out, but then I wake up to the same old thing again.
Wow. I don't know what to say. Are you getting some antibiotics for it and stuff?
No, there's no point because they're not going to work because I don't know how long I've had it. I cannot honestly remember being bitten by anything at all.
But it's like you, James.
I think Lorraine is right about the antibiotics. I think there comes a point pretty much where antibiotics do more harm than good. They take out the flora in your intestines, and you know it's very hard to get rid of.
I think we'll leave it there because that call is so powerful, and I don't even know what to say to Lorraine. Living hell that she's in. Lorraine, get well, please get help, get well. But it's a horrible disease. James, thank you for coming in talking about Lyme disease. James Delingpole, and write that book because it's going to be something that is more and more pressing.
Yeah.